Welcome back, everybody. We're at about the last half of the pandemic, late 2021, early 2022. I started noticing a pattern to the decodes that I was doing. The pattern was mold. And many of you are suffering from mold infections. And we did a series of decodes that some of which predated the TV series The Last of Us. And it was all about the mold apocalypse. And almost all of these decodes predated a particular phenomenon that you guys were suffering from, mold poisoning. And so, knowing what we know, none of this is an accident, is it? Now, if you're suffering from mold, you're definitely going to want to watch what we have now conclusively discovered as predictive programming that seem to be signaling what we know now, that it is likely a mold bioweapon that was released or intensified during the pandemic that might even tie into 5G frequencies, which was also signed during the pandemic. And we saw this steep rise in mold infections. And all this might be connected. I have to say might be because of the algorithms. But before we get into this, I'd like to know, have you suffered from what you believe is some kind of mold infection or illness in the past 5 years? Let's start this poll here. And then we will continue on with this playlist that I put together going all the way back to the beginning. We're going to make our way through this playlist from all these decodes that we did so that some of you might get some insight or spiritual relief from what has developed into the mold apocalypse. And we're going to try to zero in on the pivotal points of these decodes. The playlist exists, but I can filter through them because there's a lot of other information in some of these videos. So we'll just cut straight to the parts that are all about mold. So this will save you a bunch of time. And we will stay focused on the progression of information. Now, moving forward, we will basically, I'll number these 1, 2, 3, 4. So today is mold apocalypse number 1. And every day or two, every few days, we're not going to do it every day, but I'll intermix these shows with current headlines and other decodes. But welcome to mold apocalypse number 1. I can already see about half of you feel as though you have a mold infection. And if you were to have been asked this question 5 years ago, like in 2018, 2019, it'd probably be like 5 or 10% of you who felt as though you had a mold infection. So something is happening, isn't it? That is just an unbelievable statistic. I'll let that poll ride as more people come into the show. But this first video that we did goes all the way back to January 2022. And actually, a year prior to this, when I look back in my shows, we did a video called Archive 81. So this video is a re-upload of that one. The Archive 81 goes all the way back to January 2021. But it got copyright blocked, so I had to re-upload it, which is what you're going to watch now. This one from 2022. Let's go ahead and get started, you guys. We've been talking a lot about mold recently, haven't we? And one of you asked me to take a look at this film called The Super Deep. It was a 2020 film. Now, for those of you that don't know, the Super Deep is the deepest borehole in the world. It's located near the Arctic Circle in Russia, in far western Russia. And it is said that these screams from souls suffering in hell were said to be heard coming from this hole. And many people were very troubled working on it. They had to quit. And the people that are still around that worked on this hole often talk about these eerie screams, echoes coming out from the center of the earth. Well, this film, The Super Deep, it's a Russian film. It taps into that whole scenario, that whole aspect of the souls coming out from the earth. And it also proposes another theme that we'll get into, which is organisms trapped beneath the frozen earth that are then resurrected to threaten the existence of humanity. Now, in this film, which released on the 4th of November, the eve of the 5th of November, right? That wasn't probably an accident. There's an end of the world scenario of mold being basically starting to spread after the drilling of this hole. And the film is set in 1984, of course. There's another clue. Now, understand that I do not believe in the theory that a natural organism will tear through humanity's population and end the world. I just don't think that that's what's really going to happen, or at least the source of it. I think anything that we see that would do that would probably be made in a laboratory. But they'll blame it on some organism that they accidentally thawed out, right? And that's why they keep reinforcing that scenario with films like this. So, in the movie, the super deep borehole has a deep underground station. Now, in real life, there is no station underground. It's just a very narrow hole, actually. I put a thumbnail of it on the left side of the screen so you guys can see it, but it's a very narrow hole. It's maybe a foot wide, and they just bore down to see what they could find. It's not really a tunnel even, because no human could get down that thing. But anyway, there's this deep underground station doing studies and tests of what's underground. There's also like a hollow earth aspect to it, because as they go down, it seems to be kind of like hollowed out. And these scientists that are working deep underground go missing. And a few of them actually return to the surface, but they're very, very sick, infected with the mysterious mold. Now, this fits into all this research we've been doing, doesn't it? About how some of the symbolism in the film seems to be pointing at this mold aspect. Let's take a look at some of these clips. And you'll recognize that a lot of this looks like what we've been covering already. The Super Deep, released on the 4th of November, 2020, set in 1984. Let's take a look at this.
I can't understand how she survived with such a tissue damage.
Now, the Russian's a little hard to understand, so you got to really pay attention. But basically, she gets a sample of this mold off of one of the people that was down deeper in the hole who got infected, and she starts growing it on this petri dish. And, of course, it's the mold.
It's a cellular parasite.
Is it the source?
A cellular parasite. Now, there's a faction of these scientists, they're actually military, who, of course, want to weaponize this mold, right? And they basically send that woman down there to get a sample of it so that they can bring it to the surface and use it against their enemies.
Yes, and this one looks like a highly virulent form of mold.
What does that mean for us?
Fungi and mold are the least studied forms of life. And this one is unknown to science.
We have a situation in the infirmary. Get over here. Now. Over.
Now, the basis of our research into mold and seeing it appear in different films, in the symbolism and the pre-programming, preparing us for it, and preparing us for the reason why they say the mold is spreading, which we know will be a lie, is because we were looking into gee-whiz technology. We call it now Jive gee-whiz. And we've been looking into that because 5G, we can say it now, but couldn't say it back then. It was censored. Let's keep listening. There is a particular scientist who did a study that showed that when you send these EMFs into mold, it actually causes the mold to excite, to grow more rapidly, and to release mycotoxins. So now understand that this thing that happens to mold when you send EMFs into it, it didn't start at Jive G. It might have started at 4 and 3G, right? Because this is all about frequencies and how it affects things. Now, we also looked at just empirical evidence that all of us have talked about and recognized, some of us in our 40s and 50s and 60s. We realize that now all of a sudden, we live in a different kind of world where mold grows in a lot more places than it used to. And we're recognizing that just through our own observation. And now, of course, the establishment will say that this is because of the warming of the environment, which produces, more places for the mold to grow. So this is all starting to feel like a big setup, isn't it? That they had to come up with the whole warming scenario and climate change to give an excuse as to why the mold is starting to proliferate around the planet. But we all know that it's probably a much different reason
for it, don't we? Let's keep listening and watching. Now, this movie pretty much sucked. It was just boring and lame. It was like a Alien knockoff, I guess, is the best way I could describe it. At the end, of course, they put the lead actress in her underwear, just like Sigourney Weaver was in her underwear, and she fights the mold monster. So it's a pretty ridiculous movie, but it's got a lot of symbolism in preparing people for what is to come. Now, this guy goes into this bathroom type area. There's tiles all over the wall, but it's covered in mold, of course. The moldy bathroom. We've all seen the moldy bathrooms before, right? And this mold is growing into this organism, and it basically shoots spores out and infects this guy. There's your gloves and mask symbolism. Now, this was, again, 2020, well into the spam-demic, but when was this filmed? You know, I'd like to know. Was this filmed? Let's take a look at when the production was on this, because this might have been filmed before the spam-demic even started. Or maybe it wasn't. Let's see. Does it say production in here? I don't think it does. Just says the cast, so they don't tell you. Okay, they don't tell you when filming completed, but just know that this is all programming.
Czechoslovakia? Bulgaria?
Now let me back that up. Now this is specifically made to look like male parts, isn't it? Because what this really is of the serpent. The serpent has something to do with this bioweapon, this mold bioweapon that I believe is going to be released onto the world, or already has been, and it's now going to grow like a petri dish as all this technology comes online. So this was done on purpose because this is the seed of the serpent, right? So they put some man parts here, and then have the the mold actually shoot out of this part right here. So the depiction here is pretty clear of what they're trying to show. Now, let's get into this next part, because the mold in this film needs body heat to survive. And if it's exposed to the tundra or the cold, it dies instantly. And so the tundra basically is its prison, and it wouldn't have been able to get out unless we were drilling down into it to bring warm bodies in so that it could find a way to escape. Again, I think this is theory. I don't think this is what's really going to happen or what is happening, but this is the story that they want us to believe so that they can release their bioweapon, right? So, the cold. We've heard this whole thing about the cold before, haven't we? Because, remember, the sticker needs to be stored in sub-zero temps. So, it's like an opposite.
The vaccine needs to be stored in sub-zero temps. Notice the alopecia aspect to this as well. This guy obviously is bald. Again, this was 2020, before the vaccine ever even came to market. Let's keep watching.
Do the opposite, or contrast, or give you the opposite meaning of what they're depicting, because it kind of throws you off the trail. But all you got to do is reverse things, and then you see the truth. So instead of the sub-zero temperatures killing the mold creature in this movie, it's actually what it needs to survive. Now, this, of course, did come out long before the actual Pokemon sticker was developed. And so this aspect of the cold is definitely telling us that they might have known something about this before they actually created the Pokemon sticker.
What hosts is expanding his
Pokemon sticker equals vaccine.
colony. The permafrost will destroy it. That's his weak spot. Inside of a warm-blooded carrier, it can survive everything. But if a carrier dies in a cold environment...
Now, here's another part here, and it just goes to show you that it doesn't matter if you're Chinese, Russian, American, all these people go by 2-2-3 or 3-2-2 backwards, skull and bones. This is in a Russian film. So understand that the entire world is working together, the world controllers. There are no borders anymore. They just give the illusion of borders so you feel like you are protecting something or fighting for something, and they need to keep that illusion going. So 2:23 on the clock here.
3 minutes.
So basically they go all the way down to the center of the earth, I guess you can call it, is what they want you to believe. And there's this giant red mass of mold. And what it does is, as it finds its victims, it consolidates them into this single mass. So it's all these people that are half alive, as it uses the body heat from the people to try to make its way to the surface. And in the end, she's the only survivor, but she's really infected with the mold, and then it kind of ends there and you don't really know if she's going to infect the rest of the world. So crazy, right? Now, that's pretty much all I had for Super Deep. I thought some of you might be.
Now I'm going to interrupt myself, go back in here. I did screen the latest episode of Welcome to Derry. And the reason why I'm mentioning that right now is because in that episode, remember Pennywise the clown, the red mass, he turns into a black smoke, which looks a lot like mold spores, black graphene smoke. And in that latest episode, he steals the children and he brings them on a caravan. And the children are all like levitating behind him as he crosses the frozen Red Sea. Does this ring a bell? Because it's all Old Testament stuff. Yes, the Ark of the Covenant levitated. It was so heavy, it was impossible for the two priests to carry it. It levitated. It had anti-gravitical properties. Now, you could call it the force of God levitating it, or you could say it was scientific. That really doesn't really matter. What matters is that this was depicted in Welcome to Derry in the latest episode. What else was mentioned was that Pennywise was able to see the entire timeline. And one of the victims, one of the children, said that Pennywise can see the past, present, and future. I wish I would have captured clips of it, but it was just too scary. I didn't want to show you that. So I'm telling you the story. She said Pennywise could see past, present, and future, other concepts that we've talked about. And she literally said Pennywise is going to go back in time and try to kill those who would kill him later in the timeline, which is something else we also talked about. Now, we don't believe these demons can go back in time, but they can move forward in time, down through the ages, possessing new bodies, and they know who the bloodlines are, or they're looking for the bloodlines, and they try to kill people in the last days that are going to be part of the remnant that will wage war against them in thought, in spirit, and ultimately Jesus Christ in force. So, that's a little bit weird, isn't it? That all those aspects of things we talked about, even the Ethiopian book, the Kebra Nagast, in which it actually spoke about the Ark of the Covenant being stolen by Menelik, the son of Solomon. His mother was the Queen of Sheba. Menelik went to see his father in Jerusalem. He stole the Ark of the Covenant, but it was by divine intervention. God wanted the ark moved, so he literally gave it to Menelik. Menelik was on his way back down to Ethiopia. He passed through Egypt. And the Kebra Nagast says that the ark laid waste to all of the idols in Egypt. Maybe this is why they're all destroyed. And it also says the entire caravan levitated off of the ground. That is a fascinating read if you're interested in the Kebra Nagast, the Ethiopian version of the love story between King Solomon and the Queen of Ethiopia, which was then, of course, converted to Christianity, and the rest is history. Fascinating history. So, that all happened in Welcome to Derry, which was just crazy. Now, let's keep going with this. Let's go to the next one here.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And we've been talking a lot about Jive, G, and Mold. And last week we decoded the Super Deep Borehole movie. Many of you guys watched that particular decode. And in that movie, the scientists find killer mold in the bottom of this borehole in northern Russia. Well, I kept digging around in some of these episodes of different TV shows, and Fringe was a particular episode that I wanted to look at, or a particular series, and I found this episode of Fringe called Alone in the World. And this episode was all about mold too. Now, this released in 2011, and what makes this episode special is the fact that the plot of this episode very closely resembles what we saw in two recent decodes. one, the super deep borehole, and the other was the TV series Archive 81. And as we go through these clips, you will see the similarities between all the other things we uncovered in those decodes. So what's this episode about? Well, it's about this boy who develops a symbiotic relationship with a mold that grows in this underground cavern. Now, let's get into this here. Let's make sure you guys are with me, and we'll keep going with this. So, Dr. Bishop, you're going to see him here in a second when I start to play this. He begins to see his son Peter in these black mirror reflections. Now, we saw this play out in Archive 81. It was all about this black mirror, this stone that supposedly came from a comet, and this was what brought this mold or this goo into our, onto our plane here. Let's keep watching.
Walter, it is important that you be completely honest with me so that I can make an assessment of your state of mind. So you haven't had any more of these hallucinations since?
So he sees his son Peter in the back of this man's, what do they call these? His writing board or whatever. And he sees him throughout this episode. He sees Peter, this is his son, in the other dimension. Now, what is this about? Well, the black stone originated from a comet. And like I said before this, it's the source of the black mold. Now, historically, we've seen associations drawn between comets and their contents and spamdemics that have happened around the world. The Black Plague and things like this. They said it was associated with comets. So they're bringing that theme forward into these TV series, but I believe there's an element of truth to it because the mold was supernaturally demonic and basically could possess anyone who came into contact with it in series like Archive 81. Remember, the woman starts painting with this black mold, and then she becomes taken over and possessed. She becomes a spirit receiver for the enemy. Now I'm interrupting myself. We're back in 2025, and this whole theme of a comet or some, intergalactic, heavenly body bringing the mold to Earth. This is again repeated in Welcome to Derry. This is the origin of Pennywise the Clown. The story is that he came in on a comet, hit the Earth, and the shards of the comet is what they used to try to contain Pennywise the Clown. They try to contain him with the bits and pieces of the comet. They use them as daggers. Now, wrap your brain around this for a minute, because pennies are made out of copper. What they're essentially saying is that Pennywise is the blue blood with the red hair and everything. He's the demonic spirit. Now, this isn't anything against people with red hair, obviously. This is about choices that you make. Obviously, Jesus came, shed his blood for everyone who decides to believe in him. The first example we have of this is Cain. God told him, even after he murdered his brother, he told him, go and you have a choice to do good or evil. Then he forbid people from killing Cain, right? Cain's name means blue, cyan, Cain. Pennies, when they oxidize, turn a bluish green color. Now, let's keep going with this. Just wanted to basically connect the dots from past, present, and future with these decodes so you can see that we were never just shooting in the dark. We were looking at real themes. In this case, a comet that brings this black dust, this black goo, this mold, the black mold. In this Fringe episode, of course, as you just saw, we get a hint of the same theme, this comet-born Blackstone, when he sees his son in the reflection. Let's keep watching here. Now, what does all this mean? Well, I believe that this Blackstone is the man in the mirror. Let's back this up, actually. I want to show you guys this.
Since.
The man in the mirror. Now, many of you will remember that Thump was seen as the man in the mirror. So, and he was, of course, the bringer of the stickers, right? And the bringer of the bringer of the stickers being the bringer of the vaccine. And then, of course, there's the clown connection, which is obvious now. It wasn't so obvious years ago, but Trump is the clown. So all this is fitting in together. Trump is Pennywise, isn't he? Now, let's thumbs that up for ourselves. Whoa, 777. That's pretty crazy. Now, again, this video is from 3 years ago. Okay, let's keep watching and see if any of this has come to fruition. Because now we're into 6G, right?
Let's keep watching.
Vision and chaos. Let's see if, oh, there it is there. And there were many, many images of him in this mirror, right? He was on the cover. There was all these cartoons made about him. Okay. Why? Why? Because he liked to see himself in the mirror. He had pictures of himself all over the house. So in effect, that's a man in the mirror. Putting a picture of yourself in your own house is the ultimate form of ego. It means you have so much ego inside of you that you want to see yourself everywhere you go, which was his brand as well. It was a T everywhere. Everywhere his properties, he would put this T on everything. So there's a connection here. The man in the mirror, the bringer of the stickers, and of course the chaos and destruction and division that ensued. He acted as the comet, basically, that brings disease and destruction. Now, Apollo also brought disease and the cure. That's what he was known for in antiquity. So I don't think we're far off the mark here in breaking this down in this fashion. This is all spiritual. It's happening on a spiritual level, and it's as well as symbolic. The facts is that this spamdemic happened under his presidency, and he offered the cure, and he calls himself Apollo. Those are the facts. Apollo, bringer of disease, and the bringer of the cure. So he actually fit on a spiritual level with what is known about these different characters. Now, history has shown us that had we ignored the spamdemic, or at least limited the strategy to affect only those who are most vulnerable, right, and provide options for them, well, I think that we can all agree that history has proven that that would have been the proper course, to make accommodations for those most vulnerable instead of placing the entire economy under, basically hijacked. And so we could have saved the economy with minimal impact to the health of the country, because it's impossible to try to unite a country behind an effort by forcing half of its people to do something against their will. That's never worked in history before. It always leads to civil conflict. Let's keep watching this here.
What the hell is this?
So this boy here, he's getting bullied, of course, by these two other boys. So he leads them down into this service tunnel. And little does he know that he's developed this symbiotic relationship with the mold. The mold then attacks the boys because the boy here is under threat. So,
wow, down in the tunnel, down in the sewers, there's another Pennywise connection with the black smoke, the black mold.
Let's keep watching.
Corpse is putting high levels of oxygen out of the air.
So Bishop, this guy here, realizes it's the mold that killed the boys, when he realizes that the mold is actually sucking oxygen out of the air. And now I'm starting to wonder if there is a mold component to VidCo 19, representing lack of oxygen, because that's what mold does. It pulls oxygen out of the air and everything around it. Let's keep watching.
Corpse is putting high levels of oxygen out of the air. Dear God. The incubation case. I don't remember there being this much mold on the ribcage before. Quickly! Grab the other end. We have to contain it.
So, just like in the Super Deep movie that we just decoded last week, the mold explodes and releases all these spores. Let's keep watching.
Spores? I had assumed that the mold was just a symptom of the rapid decomposition. I'm starting to believe that it was an aggressive form of fungi that killed the boys.
What are you doing? We're gonna get them out. We can't open that door. We need to get a team in here and lock down the area. We can't just leave them to die.
Remember, you guys will remember that scene as well in Super Deep, where there's a room and they have to lock different parts of it off to try to contain it, but there really is no way to contain it. And then we get a clue that takes us right back to iPetCo 2, which had not released yet when this episode came out. iPetCo 2 released in 2012, and this episode released a year earlier. But yet here we see the apple with the two fetuses.
Now I'm wondering if this is about the digital twin. Because remember, this is what 6G is going to do. It's going to make a digital twin of you. And that's absolutely tied into this mold thing. See, this is why it's important to go back through these decodes. Let's listen to what I had to say.
What does this represent? Well, these are the two seeds. The two seeds. And look here at iPetCo 2. The two seeds. The two seeds intertwined with one another. Now, what is this all about? It's the twisting seed lines, the merging of the two seeds into one magnetic field, into the tree of evil, leaving out the good, leaving the good behind. Remember, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was most likely, it is our prison, but what it is most likely are two magnetic fields of opposites, positive and negative. And literally, the magnetic field looks like a tree with a trunk and branches and roots. And this is our prison. This is where we're at. We're locked here. Everything in this reality is about duality and division. The devil rules this reality, and he rules through duality and division, which is how God knew that if Eve entered this tree through the portal, that she would surely die. How do you combat the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? With unity. You disable the positive, negative magnetic fields, and you find unity in the middle with Christ, which is, do not believe the ruler of this world's lies and how he tries to pit one side against the other. Because I think everybody could agree that if we self-governed, 99% of the conflicts and differences and all the things that divide us would simply disappear. The conflict and division is coming from the top down. And this is why you see the checkerboard floor beneath the seeds, beneath the two magnetic fields. An apple is the shape of a magnetic field. So what you're looking at here is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But the enemy wants to elevate himself above the Most High and unite the two seeds under a false pretense, under evil, which is the do what thou wilt, which ultimately always affects other people. You can't just do what you want in this reality, because your choices and decisions will ultimately affect other people. And that is not love. That is not the law of love. So let's keep watching here.
I'm already dead. I'm already dead.
So Dunham, that's Agent Dunham, she realizes we're already dead. Now, what does that really mean? Well, it suggests that many of us who made certain choices about what they will and won't put into their bodies basically are dead men walking.
How do you recommend killing these things?
A strong dose of UV light or intense heat.
So Dr. Bishop realizes that UV light or intense heat are basically the only two things that can kill mold. Now, we did a decode on a very important building in New York called the Wyndham New Yorker. And inside the hotel, they were using a brand new technology in its time. This was in the 1930s. And it was the use of UV lamps to sanitize all of the bathrooms. Now, I've got clips of this machine that they had. It was basically a giant UV lamp. And I began to think about this because we've been trying to solve the mystery of the New Yorker, haven't we? The place where Tesla died on the 33rd floor. Because the New Yorker was a giant electromagnetic power plant. And in fact, interestingly, it was a direct current power plant. Even though Tesla invented AC current, he lived and died in this place that had DC current. Now, this building was a wonder of the world during its time, during its heyday. It was self-contained. It was able to power itself, independent of the grid. So you can imagine the strength of the magnetic field that it must have produced. It even boasted a radio in every room, which likely expanded that electromagnetic field from the engine room that was down in the basement to every other room in the hotel. Now, here's what we know about mold. It is excited and releases mycotoxins when it is exposed to electromagnetic frequencies. And now I'm starting to wonder if the reason why they had to bring this new technology of UV light, I'm wondering if it was to control mold that was growing out of control in the hotel based on the high electromagnetic field.
Now, there's nothing new under the sun. Trump's uncle being one of the inventors of millimeter wave technology and radar. The Wyndham New Yorker with the electromagnetic field was probably some giant experiment. Mold was growing out of control, so they had the UV lights in the bathrooms where the moisture was. And now Trump essentially repeating the exact same scenario with 5G and 6G. technology that his uncle invented, essentially, or helped invent with Van de Graaff and Tesla. They were all working on radar technology. They found a frequency that excited mold. They didn't tell any of us. And then Trump now, of course, being the 5G, 6G president. It seems to all connect. Let's keep watching. We'll get through this one today, and then the others in the playlist will be in Mold Apocalypse number 2, either tomorrow or the day after. Let's keep watching here.
Molds and frequencies going on in that building. Mold that was excited by those frequencies. And now I'm starting to wonder if that particular situation was the discovery of an unintended discovery that would later become the concept behind the modern mold bioweapon.
Should effectively eradicate them.
Now here's the machine here. We've covered this before in previous decodes. It's a sanitizer is what it's billed as. GE Electric made it. It killed everything. And of course we know, based on Dr. Bishop's comments, that it also killed mold. They then wrapped these bathrooms in cellophane. Was that to prevent new spores from landing?
Understood. Agent Mace's broils. We're going to need high-intensity UV lamps in here, as many as you can find.
So I crossed over to the other side with the intention of bringing him back to Cuba.
So Dr. Bishop begins connecting with this boy, trying to figure out, the nature of this connection that he has to this mold. So, of course, they put on the tinfoil hats. Now, we've all seen tinfoil hats before, but I think in this context, it means something much different. I believe that what they're depicting here are metal crowns, symbolizing the mixing of metal with humans, which could essentially turn each human into a battery that they could then interface with Jive G and the network to draw power off of us. Now,
wow, this was 3 years ago, before really anybody was talking about 6G yet, which essentially is exactly what I just said in this video, turning you into a human battery. Let's keep watching.
What would that do? Well, there would be all kinds of EMF in the air, which would increase mold growth. And that would be the dark symbol, the visual representation of the hive mind. We would see it all around us. Mold is the visual representation of the energy transfer from humans to the Jive G grid, just like in Archive 81, where the mold became the proof that the portal was opened and that soul energy was being transferred. So in other words, the mold is a perfect metaphor for the hive mind.
Cure him. And I discovered an alternate universe where another version of my son was dying from the same malady. But the frozen lake where I created a portal between universes was unsound.
Now he explains here to the boy how dimension shifts, or aka time travel, works. So now we have the time travel component to this. Portals between universes. Now, in Bishop's case, his portal opened in a cold and sub-zero place, which you're going to hear him describe here as a frozen lake. Let's back this up a little bit.
Wow, and there you go again with Welcome to Derry. They were on a frozen lake. Unbelievable. Let's keep watching.
But the frozen lake where I created a portal between universes was unsound. And when we crossed back, the ice broke.
So, interesting, right? Because this is the kind of place, this frozen landscape, where you would store an organism, like a Pokemon sticker.
A vaccine.
Now we're starting to get some clues here. Now, the boy's name, the boy here was depicted, his name in real life is Evan Bird, and his stage name in the episode is Snedden. What does Snedden mean? What means snow? So, the boy...
Whoa, Snow Dawn. Snedden. Wow.
Boy must really symbolize the storage device of the portal, the cold landscape, the way that this thing is released. It has to be in sub-zero and cold. And remember when we decoded Super Deep, and I told you how in that movie, the cold is what killed the mold? And I told you that they were really telling us the opposite of the truth, that it's the cold that preserves the mold and opens the portal into our bodies. The storage place of the Pokemon sticker. There's the boy there, Snedden. Snedden means snow.
The ice broke. The ice broke. Peter. The other version of him drowned. A few more minutes. We don't want to turn you into a popsicle.
I'll get you one later, Walter.
What is that?
This is a single organism. One with rapidly evolving communication skills, enabling it to form a psychic bond with the boy. A brain cell.
Whoa, so 6G it causes the mold and then creates the psychic bond between everybody within it. That's your hive, right? So it's literally tapping into humans through the mycelial network of the mold, creating the all-seeing eye. Holy smokes.
And these tendrils, linking them together, essentially dendrites and synapses. I believe that each of these fungal...
It's creating like a nervous system. Oh, wow. Let's keep watching.
Is the equivalent to a neuron.
So Bishop figures it out. The mold is the network. You're going to hear him mention communications. And of course, the mold colony being like a brain. Neural networks.
The organism is a vast neural network. Is a vast neural network. Is a vast neural network.
Wait, you're telling me that this whole thing, all of it, is one big giant brain?
What is that?
Well, I thought that since it's a single living entity, that perhaps we should name it for the sake of clarity. Agently, Gus is a growing, evolving mind.
So he names this mold Gus. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a little fun today. Why would they name the mold Gus? Let's see how smart you guys are this morning, how sharp. What would be... Now I'll give you some clues. Let's see if you guys can figure this out. Let's see the first person who gets it. And you have to have a PayPal. I'll send you 10. I got it. Wow, good job. Now let's make sure no one else got it before him, because that happened to me a couple times. And I got in trouble. Someone got mad at me. Like, I got it first. I'm like, okay. So I think Hardy Har got it. Wow, you guys are smart. I think Hardy Har got it. Okay, so Gus is sugar. Now, okay, why would they name a mold Gus? I'll give you guys a second chance. Now, Hardy Har, go ahead and send me an email if you want it. This is round 2, another $10. Rebecca, fun Gus. Okay, yeah. I was going for something different, but he sent me an email. I'll send you a paper. Why would it be sugar? Mold feeds on it. Nah, Moss, you got it. Mold feeds on it and thrives. Notice also cancer. So, nah, Moss, send me an email, Casey Brown 1973, guys. So I got 3 smart subscribers. So, of course, fun Gus. That's great. That was great, Rebecca. I wasn't looking for that, but that's good. And then you also have sugar feeding off of, or mold feeding off of sugar, proliferating in those environments. And so if you can reduce your sugar intake, you're going to be a healthier person. But it's very difficult to do because our entire food chain is laden with sugar. Almost everything has sugar. If it didn't grow out of the ground, it's probably got a bunch of sugar in it. And now you know why. Because it's all part of this systematic breakdown and allowing these organisms to go inside of our bodies, which makes us sicker, which enriches the pharmaceutical industrial complex because we're in the doctor trying to figure out what's wrong with us. Let's keep watching here.
Yes. Okay, so the reason that Aaron wasn't affected when we destroyed the fungi in the morgue was...
It was because the colony growing there was unable to connect to the network.
So, if you had any doubts about what they're really talking about here, connecting to the Jive G network, then there he just said it in his own words. Connecting to the network.
And now my contention is that Gus forged a link with Aaron over this shared sense of isolation. And as it grows, it becomes more intelligent, more self-aware.
Self-aware, just like Skynet. So here we have all the descriptors of Jive G. So the mold colony develops this ability to interface with the boy. And this is what they're trying to do with us. This is why warp speed was so important, because it's a component that will be necessary to bioelectronically interface us with Jive G. And this is why you got this total package with Thump. This is why he pushed Jive G and beyond. This is why he hired the GlaxoSmithKline guy, Soloe, who had a history with bioelectronics and hacking the vagus nerve. This is why it was a complete package, because they're working on something. And this is why Thump announced the Jive G and beyond during the lockdown when we couldn't do anything about it. We couldn't protest. We couldn't do anything. And that's when he sprung that on us. So the goal is the hackable human. And whatever this bioweapon that they have will use Jive G to excite the mold inside of our bodies and around our environment, causing it to grow more aggressively in people who have had higher sugar intake, or their resistance was further weakened if they got a, let's call it a thorn. And they will.
Okay, so obviously this is hopefully going to be helpful for some of you, reducing your sugar intake, putting the router on the other side of your house if you have a 5G router, not near your bed. So these are workable solutions to try to help any mold toxicity you might have in and around you. The fire, the Bible even says if you cannot get rid of the mold, says this in the Old Testament, says to try to clean it. If it doesn't go away, you have to burn the house down. So some of you might need new construction. And I would recommend, there's a specific kind of drywall that's used in bathrooms that is mold resistant. It's a more expensive drywall, but if you were building a new house, you'd probably just want to use that drywall throughout the entire house. And, you know, I mean, overall costs for that are probably small compared to the overall cost of building the house. So that would be a recommendation. Mold feeds on water, so make sure that your roof is double and triple checked, and you can put extra layers probably of any kind of sealant or something, so that the mold does not, or so that water doesn't leak through at some point and cause water to build up where mold would grow. So these are just different ideas. Now let's keep watching here. We're almost done here, you guys.
Call it the condition or the syndrome. They'll call it a disease of the immunocompromised is what they'll say. They'll say they don't know why. And this is why this whole AIDS thing is resurfacing. And they're saying that they're going to find a cure for it based on the technology from the stickers. And the only way, as you'll see in this episode, to break the interface is to move towards Christ, the middle, stepping out of the right-left paradigm, just like this boy's going to do. Watch.
Becomes more intelligent, more self-aware,
and ever more conscious of how alone in the world it is.
But before I show you that, remember this? Ezekiel and the hole in the wall, the abominations in the wall. Wow.
How alone in the world it is.
More of it back here. A lot more.
There you go. Everything we've been talking about in an episode that came out in 2011. Almost mirroring exactly some of the more recent discoveries that we've made across other episodes and other TV shows spanning decades.
I'm ready for another.
Here you have them sharing a milkshake, but here's what's important to note about this. This isn't just a man and a boy sharing a milkshake.
More. I'm ready for another.
I'm ready for another. That would be the second dose. Straws are like needles. They're hollow inside. They deliver something from one place to another, from the outside into the body. This is all symbolic, you guys. It's all symbolic. They know what they're doing. They know what they're working on. For some reason, they love to brag about it in Hollywood.
Aaron, what's wrong?
Eden Broyles, we've located the injection point. The tech is preparing the toxin.
So there's more clues about injections because they figure out this plan to inject a toxin into the mold. But they also have to give the boy an injection too, because he's linked to the mold. So there you have two doses again.
That's what we need to reconfigure the neurostimulator for magnetic resonance.
So they realize that the boy is connected to the mold and, through the network, right? And so they have to scan the boy's brain to see how they can detach him from the mold colony. So Dr. Bishop asks his assistant to reconfigure this brain scan to read electromagnetic resonance so he can see what's going on in this boy's brain. And the contraption that he puts on the boy's head looks just like a Jive G tower. So in essence, the boy becomes a Jive G tower. Watch.
We need to chart Aaron's brain activity. You've done him. Sorry, sir.
I wish we were making all this up, but of course, now if you've been watching this for any amount of time and you're actually listening to what I'm showing you, you will see that I'm not making all this up. This boy's head now looks like a Jive G tower. He becomes the signal that ultimately ends up killing the mold. Watch.
Aaron? He's emotional. Just doesn't have a hold on him.
So here's the boy getting the shot.
There's a hold on it. The emotional center of the brain. Emotion. Yes. That's it. Give me the epinephrine.
Get me the epinephrine. So he first has to dose the boy to stabilize him because he's basically, his body is starting to fail, because on the other end, the team is injecting the mold with a toxin and the boy's feeling it. Here you see the guy with the needle. So there's your 2 doses, just like what's happening now.
I know what it is to be lonely.
Epinephrine degrades into adrenochrome. Adrenochrome, children. It's in the package insert for epinephrine. It literally says that the EpiPen, when exposed to sunlight and oxygen, will turn pink and degrade into adrenochrome.
It takes courage to be the one to take someone else's hand, to trust that they won't leave you.
So I did a side by side. I probably could have found some better pictures of a Jive G that looks like what's on his head, but you guys get the drift here.
Aaron, I know how hard it is to make connections. I won't leave you, Aaron.
So Dr. Bishop figures it out. He has to remove all of the fear from the boy's mind. What did Jesus keep telling us over and over and over again in the New Testament?
Whoa. And adrenochrome is the fear. The fear. So right there, he says EpiPen, adrenochrome, and then the only cure is to remove the fear. Wow.
Have no fear. He told us this fact about 15 different times. Don't worry about what you'll eat or drink. That was a statement of not having fear. He told us also that we have the power to tread on serpents. That is a statement of not having fear. He told the disciples not to be afraid many times. They did not get involved in the politics of the day, did they? They did not get involved in the division. Jesus told them the opposite. Love. Love casts out all fear. So, Dr. Bishop basically helps the boy not have fear. And when that happens, it severs the connection between the boy and the mold. Wow. And it's the only way it can happen without the boy and the mold dying together. Now, what would that...
Now, there's another clue, of course. Try not to be in fear if you are suffering from a mold infection, because it's feeding off of that fear. So there's another clue.
That represent the wheats and the tares. God said, let them grow up together, because you can't separate them now because they're too closely linked together. You can't pull up the tares without affecting the wheat. So you wait till the end, and then that's when the separation happens. And it's the same.
Whoa. And then when the tares are pulled up, they're cast into the fire, right? Isn't that what the Bible says? So that would be the burning of the mold. Holy smokes. Let's keep watching.
Same thing happening in this episode. When you let go of emotion and fear, and you stop going with the tide when it comes to the enemy's plans. You know, I hear people, buying gold and silver. The Bible explicitly says it's the last thing you should be doing, because moths and rust destroy it. It's worth nothing. It talks all throughout the Bible about seeking riches, that it will cause your body to be stabbed over with many pains. And it puts you still in the right-left paradigm. It talks about rich men not being able to go to being very difficult for them to go to heaven, passing through the eye of a needle. So,
begging you not to leave me.
Now, this is cringy right here. At the end, because Bishop is seeing these, hallucinations in the black scrying mirror, he begins to lose his mind. So he decides to try a lobotomy on himself. Well, for those of you that have seen lobotomy pictures and how they do it, the procedure looks a lot like a Vidco 19 test swab instruction manual. He opens the book. Here's this red ribbon across it. Another clue. This is the bow mentioned in Revelation 2, the ribbon. And if we compare this image to an actual specimen collection image, you can see that the images are very similar.
What the? Wow. Sometimes I'm blown away by my own decodes. Literally a nasal swab.
The area is completely numb. I know exactly what I'm doing.
So she pulls it out of his eye. And of course, I don't even often mention the one-eyed symbolism because it's just so obvious now. But of course, there's the one-eyed symbolism there. So unbelievable, right? And this was just a simple search going through all the episodes, the synopsis of the episodes anyway, in Wikipedia. I searched the word mold, and lo and behold, there it was. And I was like, I got to decode this. Now, there's another episode that I may be decoding next in which a virus appears. It's called What Lies Below. 2nd season, 12th episode. And there's all this stuff about what seems to be happening right now. So I may decode this one next. But if we don't decode that next, we'll do a Between the Headlines show tomorrow because I've already got...
Okay, so I will put a link to the playlist for those of you that want to jump ahead. But we will continue on with the Mold Apocalypse series. The next one will be number 2. And that's either going to be tomorrow or the day after. And let's end the poll here. At least half of you are suffering from a mold infection. So it confirms what I just said. Let's do another poll here. And I want to ask you if you answered yes to being to having a mold infection. Did it happen after 2020? Okay, now we might be shocked. I'm thinking about 90% will say it happened after 2020. Remember, only answer this question if you answered yes to having a mold infection in the last poll. Let's start the poll. I'm going to guess 80 to 90%, which would confirm that this is a modern phenomenon. Let's see what the poll says. Unbelievable. Wow. Look at that. Almost 3/4 of you. Or more. Wow. Unbelievable. This is why it's important to have alternative media so that people can help each other, because the mainstream media is not going to tell us these things, are they? And we need to protect ourselves. The Bible says they perish because of lack of knowledge. Well, who has the monopoly on knowledge? The evil controllers of this world. Well, about 2/3 to 3/4 of you developed your mold infection after 2020. Unbelievable. Well, hopefully there were some clues in today's show. Prayer, of course, is the top of the list. This is a spiritual dynamic. It's also having no fear. We talked about, getting the router as far away from your house as possible. If it's possible, you can go back to 4G, which is a different technology. I don't even know if they have that where you can go back to 4G technology. Do not sleep with your phone next to your head. These are just some clues. Burn down or burn away anything that you think might have mold on it. Don't try to hold on to things that might be growing mold. And these are some clues that hopefully help some of you. And there will be many, many more clues as we make our way through this series. But I just can't even believe this statistic. 3/4 of you developed this after 2020. after Trump started putting in 5G everywhere. We were all locked down while this was happening. They were going around and installing the 5G infrastructure. Many channels caught this on videotape. These crews creeping around the telephone poles and creeping around installing the 5G technology while we were all locked down. And then now it's in place. Here we are, 3 or 4 or 5 years later, and it's all in place now. So, all right. Yeah, a lot of people's phones in the rural areas are still on 4G. So again, another reason to be in a rural area. If you're in the middle of a city, it's going to be almost all 5G. So, all right. Okay, I'm in the chat now. All right, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and pop off of here. Thanks for showing up. And if you hadn't heard by now, apparently, if you're watching the whole Erica Kirk, Candace Owens thing, they met yesterday. I don't know, you guys. This is starting to get really weird. I'm watching it. Of course, I don't trust any of these mainstream podcasters, but I will say Candace Owens is the only one calling out the country that shall not be named and implicating them, or she did before. We'll see what happens after she talked to Erica Kirk. We'll see, right? This is how we're going to know if it's a psyop or not, based on what Candace Owens says today. It's probably the most anticipated podcast in the entire history of podcasters, because Candace Owens has now emerged as the world's top podcaster. She announced that a couple weeks ago. So whether we like it or not, this is what the reality is, and we will see what she says. And if she whitewashes all this and says there was nothing to see here, move along, then we'll have our answer. But if she's like doubles down and says, nope, none of this passed the sniff test, then we will have our answer there. Or may, I don't know. Again, I don't trust any of these people, but we will see, right? I always keep an open mind. So we will see. We will see. All right. Well, I think that's about it. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Was the show helpful today? I hope it was. What are mold infection symptoms? That's a very good question. Let's end the show with that. So you guys can all, half of you believe you have a mold infection, a current ongoing mold infection that started after 2020. So please share with us what your symptoms have been. From my experience, from people that I know that have had mold, it's been black. How do I describe this? Black flakes in the nasal cavity, in the sinuses, postnasal drip, problems going to the bathroom, inability to go to the bathroom as the infection increases, temperature swings. I mean, there's all kinds of symptoms, and it's kind of different for different people based on what kind of infection you have. Aspergillosis is probably the most common infection, but there are also different strains. So some people have problems breathing, muscle aches, flu-like symptoms. Okay, now if you're experiencing these things, don't automatically assume you have a mold infection, but many of you have already isolated that. When you go into a place that has mold, you start reacting to it. Rashes is huge too. Rashes are a big part of this. And so, digestion issues, yes. And that's been my experience with people that I've known that have had mold infections. So hopefully that's helpful. Yes, the mucus. So, all right. I think we'll end the show there. I love each and every one of you. We'll get through all this. Knowledge is power. And so hopefully, some of this helped you guys. I love all of you. I do this for you, because the mainstream media is not going to help us. They ignore these things while we suffer in silence. So now you have a voice, and maybe you can recommend this Mold Apocalypse series to other people that you know that might be suffering from mold. They might not understand the rest of the work we do here, but this work might help some people. So have a great rest of your day, everybody. Much love.